What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, division rivals? This is Steven Hyder with Gate City Sports Channel, the sports channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is you get around to watching us. Once again, guys, Steven Hyder, Gate City Sports Channel. All right, y'all, today's topic. Listen, this weekend, we covered the wide receivers, right? I went in depth. I showed you a little film. I told you how I thought the roster would shake out. So today, I thought it would only be appropriate if I came back and did a video that pretty much did the same thing with our secondary. In particular, I want to talk about the corners we have on this team. As I went through and I took a look at the roster, guys, I identified 13 different players who are probably lining up and competing for the open positions we have at cornerback. Now, obviously, we're not going to have obviously there's a couple of positions that are solidified along that line. So it's really a few guys fighting for maybe one or two spots. We get that. But without further ado, let's name some of these individual players, guys. Number 1, Rasul Douglas. Number 2, Craig James. 3, Sidney Jones. 4, Cre'Von Leblanc. 5, Avante Maddox. 6, Nickell Robey-Coleman. 7, Darius Slay. 8, Tremont Smith. 9, Trevor Williams. 10, Grayland Arnold. 11, Michael Jaquette. 12, Elijah Riley. 13, Prince Smith. These are the 13 gentlemen we will be discussing today. I will be talking about where these guys fit. I mean, how many of these guys have positional versatility, right? There's some guys that can play the nickel, they can play outside, they can play safety. Some of these guys might be able to play down into the box. So then we're going to talk about, outside of that, what about schematic versatility? Some of these guys might be better suited for man coverage. Some of these guys are probably better suited for zone coverage. Some of these guys might have a lot of experience playing different cover sets. Cover 1 versus cover 3. Cover 6 versus cover 4 or cover 2. So we're going to talk about those different things today, guys, and we're going to stack these guys up. I'm going to talk about what I see on film from the Eagles. I'll give you some early predictions on what I think Jim Schwartz is going to do in terms of the schematic things to do with this defense, and then how each one of these, kind of players fits. I'll give you my prediction of the 5 or 6 guys I think that'll make this roster, and I'm probably leaning more towards 6 defensive backs making the roster. But without further ado, guys, let's go ahead, and you already know what time it is. It's time to jump into today's topic. All right, guys, let's jump into this.
Haskins will take over at some point. And a first down. They will run it and run it to Dice.
All right, guys, let me explain the clip I just showed you here a second ago. This was the opening play for the defense to the 2019 season. And the Eagles came out in a sub-package nickel. If you looked on the field, this is what you would see. If you look at the defensive line, you got Graham on one side, you got Cox, you got Malik Jackson, and then you got Derek Barnett on your D-line. Your linebackers, because we're in the nickel, the only 2 linebackers you have out there is you got Nigel Bradham playing your Mike, and then your Will was Zach Brown. Your secondary, your left cornerback was Ronald Darby. Your right cornerback was Rasul Douglas. Your nickel was Avante Maddox, and then your safety there. So your safeties. You had Malcolm Jenkins, who came up in the box, just like Malcolm Jenkins kind of does. And then your free safety playing over the top in that single high look. That was Rodney McLeod. Now, the debate gets into here, guys, is trying to figure out if this is cover 1 or cover 3. My gut instinct just watching film from the Eagles last year is this was a cover 3 concept. But I will be honest, when a play is this obvious, it's harder to tell cover 1 from cover 3 because your linebackers are automatically going to go ahead and shoot the gap because they know exactly what's coming. It's not like they're being held up to drop into their zones in a cover 3. When trying to figure man from zone, watch how Avante Maddox and Rasul Douglas pass off the receiver. And the way the Eagles play cover 3 is already unique, guys, because we are what's known as a fast flow defense. A fast flow defense means you play the run before you drop back in your zone, right? So you're always going to be kind of held to play action on that, right? Those kind of things, RPOs, those things. We're very committed, especially on first down, to stopping the run. The beauty of playing cover 3, guys, is it allows you to put 8 people in the box to defend the run. That's the beauty of a cover 3 defense. So, as we look out here, there are a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. Number one, this idea of zone versus man schemes. because I do think the Eagles are going to play a lot of man coverage. But early on in downs, you're going to see some cover 3 because the flexibility that particular defense gives you to play the run. But what is more important to me was when we looked at those corners and just how different this football team is going to look this upcoming season. Because you're not going to have Darby, and it's very unlikely Rasul Douglas is going to be starting. Now, mind you, Rasul Douglas isn't here due to injuries. But nonetheless, as we look out across that football field this year, things are going to look different in that secondary.
Rolling, pressure, throws. He's got a completion and a first down. It's Vernon Davis, the Angels one, who stays on his feet.
All right, guys. So, over the last month or two, what I've really heard rumblings about, it's really been since we really made the Darius Slay trade. We've heard a lot of rumblings about the way Jim Schwartz likes to play defense in terms of the back-end coverages. Now, this is what I will say. A lot of people saying, look, he likes to run cover 1. I think he just likes to run single high safety. I mean, that's what I see on film, guys. Whether it's cover 1 or cover 3, he seems to love that single high safety look. He looks to me early in downs, he likes to play cover 3 because of the run support it offers. And then later in downs, especially on passing downs, he loves to play more of a cover 1 concept, although I've seen cover 3 on third downs when it's a longer third to go. The sticks defense is nothing more than the cover 3 with those 4 underneath defenders out at the sticks to protect. Here's the deal. When you're looking at this roster, you look at this construction, you just look at football in general, guys. The one thing I will show you is the film I just showed you, where we got burnt bad. That was a concept that's known as a mixed coverage, okay? Mixed coverage just means one side of the field you're playing one thing, on the other side of the field you're playing something different. In the film I just showed you guys, on the right side of the field, you're playing a man concept. Bottom of your screen, Rasul Douglas is lined up in a man concept against Terry McLaurin. Okay? So Rasul Douglas was locked up in a man concept, following his man across the field. But on the left side of the field, Ronald Darby at left cornerback is playing a zone concept. Top of your screen, look at Ronald Darby's hips, feet, and positioning on the field. Okay, it's a mixed coverage. Your inside guys look like they're man to me as well, but they're using a mixed coverage concept.
Rolling, pressure, throws. He's got a completion and a first down. It's Vernon Davis, the Angels one, who stays on his feet somehow.
We didn't have the players to execute this last year. I think what we're looking at as we look through this list here in a few minutes is going to be, do we now have the players on our roster to not only be able to go more into man and be able to use a guy like Darius Slay to follow around the team's number 1 receiver, but number 2, do we have the athleticism from positions we're not going to talk about today at linebacker and at safety, so this way we don't have a guy like Vernon Davis completely burning our secondary and breaking tackles. But, lastly, do we have the athleticism in the secondary to where we can play in mixed coverage, guys? Do we got those guys that we can back off in a zone if we want to, who can play and anticipate the ball very well? Do we have the guys that we can line up in a man? Can we play mixed coverages? Do we have the personnel to even play man? That's what I want to analyze. We know that Markin Manuel is a guy who likes to cover 1. Jim Schwartz, we've been told, prefers to play cover 1 more so. So, do we have the players to make this marriage come together? That's what we want to look at in this next part, guys. Graylin Arnold playing towards the strong side of the formation, field side. Look at how fluid he is in that sticks defense. All right, guys. I just want to pull the Band-Aid off right away here. I think there are 8 guys that are really competing for what I would probably consider to be 5 to 6 open roster spots here. And I think right off the bat, you can eliminate 5 guys. I mean, just right off the bat, they could make the practice squad. You got to remember, guys, we're allowed to carry extra practice squad players. And the reason we're calling this video or talking about a 55-man roster is because you can actually bring up temporarily 2 players from your practice squad to your active roster and go with a 55-man roster. You can do that temporarily. And what that will help you do, guys, is you're allowed to then move those players in and out of active roster to the practice squad twice without subjecting them to cuts, to waivers, to be claimed by another team off of a waiver. So there is some versatility there, okay? You could do that in theory. But I'm just going to talk about it real quick and just tell you guys, I don't see them competing right now for an actual spot. Tremont Smith. Look, maybe this kid really balls out and earns himself a place on our practice squad. It's a player I'm going to be watching. I love his measurables. I love the little bit of film I've seen from this kid. He does have some similarities to Trevor Williams. It's not just his physical size, it's the way he plays the game too. I could see this kid, if he's good enough and shows enough during training camp and preseason, maybe working his way onto the practice squad. I don't see this kid on the active roster. I'm just going to be forthcoming there. Graylin Arnold. Graylin Arnold's an interesting guy. He's one of these guys that we just kind of signed as an undrafted rookie free agent. He's got some kind of, not Cre'Von Leblanc, but he's got a little Avante Maddox to his game. He's a kid that might be suited to a position change as a safety, playing the free position. But we've got a ton of guys on this team that already play that position. He's a kid I would definitely watch out for the practice squad. I want to see what this kid does in training camp. I want to see what this kid does in the preseason. I just don't think he has a legitimate chance, guys, at making the active roster. Michael Jacquet, 6'2", 201-pounder, big, physical Rasul Douglas type. And, look, all these guys, they make me interested to see what they're going to do. But I'm going to be honest, we have such a cluster of good football players right now at the cornerback position, guys that are not, maybe they're not top-tier talent, but they're serviceable, that I think it's going to be hard for some of these guys to sneak on this year. Elijah Riley, another guy, not quite as lengthy as like a Rasul Douglas or a Michael Jacquet, but big guy. I mean, 6 foot, 205 pounds. I think this is one of those guys that they're going to play outside, but he should probably play inside or maybe even as a safety role, but definitely got a little intrigue there. I thought we did a good job of selecting these bottom of the roster kind of competition guys. Tremont Smith, 5'10", 185. He's another one of these kind of like Craig James, Trevor Williams, Tremont Smith types. This is a guy I would pay attention to. But once again, guys, I'm just going to be honest. Tremont Smith, Elijah Riley, Michael Jacquet, Graylin Arnold, and then I would say that Tremont Smith. It's just not. It's not likely that these kids are really going to honestly compete for a roster position. So I would just go ahead and cut those guys now. So let's get into the 8 players that are competing and where they're going to be competing at. All right, ladies and gents, the 8 players I see competing for those 5 or 6 open roster spots. Rasul Douglas, Craig James, Sidney Jones, Cre'Von Leblanc, Avante Maddox, Nickell Robey-Coleman, Darius Slay, Trevor Williams. Those would be my 8 players I see legitimately fighting for positioning on this football team. Now, when you look at these 8 players, you can group them into outside versus inside position alignments. So let's start with the outside guys. I think you got Rasul Douglas, who Rasul can play inside and outside, but he's going to primarily be viewed as an outside guy. You got Sidney Jones, also can play inside or outside, primarily would be viewed as an outside guy. You got Avante Maddox, who I think is a little more tricky. The coaching staff has talked about moving him outside to compete with Sidney Jones, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets bounced back inside if Sidney Jones proves to be as good as what he looked down the stretch of last year. Then you get Nickell Robey-Coleman is inside. Never mind, guys. Then you get Darius Slay, who is clearly an outside guy, but Darius Slay is your number 1. He's going to go inside, outside. He's just going to take a team's best receiver and go follow him. Doesn't matter where they're aligned. And then you got Trevor Williams, who I think is your last guy competing on the outside. Now, if we take this, guys, and we flip it around and we talk about the nickel corners, who are the guys competing for those nickel alignments? I think you got to go Craig James. Craig James would be 1. I think you have to look at Cre'Von Leblanc. That would be 2. Nickell Robey-Coleman would be 3 to me. And then I would also add back Avante Maddox into that picture again. I think they're just going to try to get the best football players possible on the field. And guys like Avante Maddox give you the versatility of outside, inside. Nickell Robey-Coleman, you can make that same army. He could technically play outside as well. They don't have the ideal height and length, but they're very good football players. I think those 2 guys are what makes you think, like with a guy like Darius Slay falling around a team's number 1, you can take those players that are versatile and then move them outside or inside, depending upon the matchup that you want to get your best football players on the field at the same time in terms of your coverage packages. Cover 2, big nickel. Let's count the safeties. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, guys. Out of these 8 players that I said probably have the best chance at making the football team, I'll give you the 4 that I think are the most at jeopardy right from the front. Rasul Douglas, Craig James, I would say Trevor Williams would be 3, and Cre'Von Leblanc would be 4. I think these 4 players are in the most jeopardy of not making the football team, which to me would give you kind of 4 locks that something horrible has to go wrong for these guys not to make the football team. Sidney Jones, Avante Maddox, Nickell Robey-Coleman, and Darius Slay. I think those are your 4 locks. Now the real question becomes, are we going to keep 5 or are we going to keep 6? Now, there's a reason why I showed you that clip of us playing big nickel on a 3rd down. Because what I noticed when I was watching that football game was when we did not go into a weird prevent sticks cover 3 defense, then we went into a big nickel with playing 3 safeties on the field. If you're going to play 3 safeties, especially when you have the 4 safeties we have currently on this football team, who I think can play inside, outside, and over the top of the defenses. I mean, let's be real. K'Von Wallace, and then you look at a guy like Jalen Mills, you look at a guy like Will Parks, and you look at a guy like Rodney McLeod. Those 4 guys have a lot of versatility, and they can potentially take up roster space from a corner. So you got to have to consider that as we're making this analysis, guys. Now, if I had to shake it out, I would say Craig James, love the guy. He's a guy we'd probably love to sneak back on the practice squad again and just kind of keep around just because he did show he could play. But I think he's definitely going to be one of those guys that's hard to get on. And then it comes down to me to these 3 guys and how we see them. Could we get them on the roster? Could we sneak them on the practice squad, which is very unlikely because I don't even think some of them even qualify for the practice squad. And then to make matters worse, is there any trade value? Rasul Douglas, we'd probably love to move or find a trade for. I'm not going to say this guy is completely off the roster because at the end of the day, the kid can come down inside of your red zone packages, and he can actually go down there and provide you size on bigger receivers in the red zone. Also, he's got a lot of playing experience. Let's just be real. Cre'Von Leblanc. This is a kid that I think Strap can really play. I think this is a guy you find a way to kind of get him on the roster if you can. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if we just look at our roster and go, okay, look, this guy's going to have value. Someone's going to want this kid. Maybe we can move him for some picks or a player that in a position we need more. I ultimately think he's going to be on the roster, and you'll see that in a second, but he would be the other guy I'd watch out for. And then Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams played a lot of right cornerback, guys. Go back to 2018, Week 1, the film against Kansas City. You're going to see a guy who played a lot of right cornerback, which is going to be valuable in a position battle with Sidney Jones and Avante Maddox to have another guy who has played right cornerback a lot. He played it in man situations. He played it when it was on the boundary side. He played it when it was on the field side. He played it in a zone concept. The kid has experience. He's just had an unfortunate run of injuries. I don't know if he's healthy. If he is healthy, he adds intrigue. But I definitely think he's in jeopardy. With that said, I'm just going to get into my early forecast, and I'm forecasting 6 defensive backs, okay? I shouldn't say defensive, 6 corners, and then 4 safeties. But I do think that you could see a 5-5 situation, guys. So early on, this is what I say, and this could change as soon as they put pads on and they start playing, guys. When we start seeing them in training camp, we start seeing them in the preseason games. But I'm going to say the guys that I'm going to go with my 4 locks. Darius Slay, he's your number 1 cornerback. He's on this football team. Sidney Jones, I think this is his prove-it year. I think he's on this football team. This is his chance to take over that starting role. The third guy is Avante Maddox. Avante Maddox is probably your best slot guy overall, and he can play. This kid is a safety, a corner, a nickel. He can play everywhere. You love this kid. This coaching staff absolutely loves him. Nickell Robey-Coleman, very similar versatility to Avante Maddox. I think he's such a good football player. He's going to make this football team. Now, as I went to go to project my 5th, that's where things got tougher because I'm looking at these guys that could make the roster, and I'm trying to fit where they would go. I'm going to go Cre'Von Leblanc just because Cre'Von Leblanc is he's hard not to make the roster, but I also understand he could be used as trade bait. But I like Cre'Von Leblanc. I think the kid is definitely the next best player up. I'm going to go to him. The 6th guy I'm going to put on this roster is Trevor Williams. And it's not because I think that he's going to outperform or outplay Rasul Douglas necessarily. I just think Rasul Douglas is a guy that we're going to move. There's been too many rumors around that, guys. He's probably definitely getting moved. It just seems that way to me. All right, guys, these are my 6. I think I took a couple of chances leaving Rasul off. I talked about the possibility of moving a guy like Cre'Von Leblanc. But you already know what I'm going to ask you guys. These are my thoughts. I want to know, what are your thoughts, guys? Hey, down below, guys, tell me, who are your guys? Are you taking 5? Are you taking 6? Who are you putting on the roster? Let me know, guys. This is a hard one to project. I'm not going to lie. I think we got 4 that we know. And then after that, it gets a little shady there. All right, y'all. You know what time it is. EAGLES. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all watching, man. All right. See y'all tomorrow.